Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the most compelling research to bring you the insights that truly matter.
Great to be here.
You know, for a long time, the traditional image of a career was pretty straightforward, wasn't it? Stable, predictable, leading smoothly into retirement.
The gold standard.
You started a job, worked hard, climbed the ladder maybe, and then at a certain age you gracefully exited. A clear path.
Yeah, often quite linear.
But does that idea still really hold true today in this, rapidly changing world?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Especially for people approaching their later working years. Does working longer actually mean things get more complex, maybe less predictable?
It's a critical question, and it really challenges our basic assumptions about what a late career even means now in the 21st century.
So what are we diving into today?
Today, we're doing a deep dive into this really fascinating and frankly complex concept. Extended working lives and late career destabilization. We're going to explore whether this big societal push for people to work longer might have, maybe inadvertently, led to less stable, more unpredictable career journeys for older workers.
Instead of that smooth, extended glide path everyone kind of imagines.
Exactly. It might not be that simple.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive is to really get into the source material, pull out the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. We want to help you get a crucial understanding of this subject, become well-informed without getting bogged down in jargon or tons of data.
Aiming for those aha moments, right?
That's the goal, to see the world of work maybe in a slightly new light after this.
And for this deep dive, we're grounding ourselves in a pretty remarkable study, really robust, comprehensive piece from 2018.
Okay, what's the source?
It's by Aart-Jan Riekhoff, published in Advances in Life Course Research. And what makes it so compelling isn't just that it's a snapshot, it's longitudinal.
Following people over time.
Exactly. It uses extensive Finnish register data. We're talking a massive data set, nearly 240,000 people, all born between 1937 and 1948. And they were followed meticulously over 15 years of their late careers, specifically from age 51 to 65.
That's incredible detail. 15 years.
It gives us this incredibly nuanced, historically rich look at how careers actually evolve in later life. It captures several economic shifts, policy changes. It's quite unique.
Okay, let's unpack this right away. Late career destabilization. That term itself sounds a bit, ominous. What exactly do we mean by destabilized late careers? Just losing your job?
It does sound a bit stark, yeah, but it's a pretty precise academic concept, and it's crucial for understanding what this study found.
Right.
When the study talks about destabilization, it means the process of increasing complexity within someone's life course patterns over time.
Increasing complexity.
Just think of it like researchers sometimes call it differentiation. Careers become less continuous, less stable, less predictable.
Okay, so the opposite of that traditional ideal you mentioned earlier, the single, secure, lifelong job.
Exactly. That linear path from starting work to a set retirement age, that would be the ultimate stable, non-differentiated career. Destabilization is, the opposite of that smooth ride.
So it's not just about one single bad event like a layoff, but the overall pattern of the career becoming more complicated, more twists and turns.
Precisely. That's the key. This increasing complexity, or differentiation, shows up in a few measurable ways.
How so?
First, it's an increase in the number of different states someone goes through. Not just employed, unemployed, but maybe different kinds of retirement, full, partial disability, or even periods of inactivity.
More categories you cycle through.
Right. The more categories, the higher the complexity. Second, it's about the transitions between those states. How often are you shifting gears? Is it steady work, then steady retirement, or lots of back and forth?
Okay.
And finally, maybe most importantly, it involves greater variation in how long you spend in each state.
Yeah, the duration matters too.
Hugely. Think about it. Someone works steadily for 10 years, then moves smoothly into a long retirement. That's relatively simple, predictable. Now contrast that with someone who works a few years, then faces a year of unemployment, finds a short-term contract, maybe tries partial retirement, goes back part-time.
Yeah.
You see?
Yeah, that sounds much more chaotic.
Each of those shifts and the unpredictable lengths of time in each phase adds up to higher complexity, less predictability. It's the total opposite of that stable journey.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a much richer way to look at a career path.
Yeah.
So how on earth do you actually measure something like career complexity? Seems quite abstract. Is there a specific tool?
There is, actually, and this is where the study gets methodologically quite interesting. It shows how robust it is. They use a specific metric called Elzinga's turbulence indicator.
Elzinga's turbulence indicator.
And it's not just counting job changes. It's way more nuanced. It's designed to capture the actual predictability of a career path.
How does it do that?
It quantifies complexity by looking at several things together. The sheer variety of states someone experiences, the total time spent in each of those states, and crucially, the variation in their durations.
Ah, so the timing and length of each spell within that 15-year window really matters. Gives you a dynamic picture.
Exactly. It's not static.
That sounds quite sophisticated. Can you give us some concrete examples from the study? Help us understand what the numbers actually mean for a real person's career.
Yeah, let's break it down. The examples really help clarify it. So this turbulence indicator has a minimum score of 1.00.
1.00. That's the lowest possible complexity.
Right, absolute minimum. Imagine someone who spent all 15 years, age 51 to 65, in the exact same state, like continuously employed in the same job. They'd score 1.00.
Perfectly stable, predictable.
Then, the maximum possible value is 15.0.
15.
Yeah, which would mean someone changed states every single year for all 15 years. That's extreme turbulence, almost chaotic.
Okay, 1.000 is super stable, 15.00 is wildly unstable. Got it. What about more realistic scenarios?
Good question. Let's take someone employed for 14 out of the 15 years, then spends just 1 year in retirement at the end. Their score is pretty low, 2.0. It's a clear path, single transition.
Okay.
But watch this. If they had 2 consecutive years in retirement instead of 1, the turbulence ticks up slightly to 2.47. 3 consecutive years, 3.03.
Ah, so even longer stable periods in a new state add a tiny bit more complexity, reduces the overall continuity slightly.
Exactly. It gently increases as the pattern becomes a little less dominated by that one long initial state.
Okay, that seems intuitive. But what about those less predictable situations? The bumps in the road.
Right. This is where the indicator really shows its sensitivity to predictability, which is core to destabilization. Take that same person, employed 14 out of 15 years, but instead of that 1 year of non-employment being retirement at age 65, what if it was a year of unemployment much earlier, say at age 58, right in the middle of their working life, then they went back to work?
Okay, so an interruption.
Yeah. The turbulence indicator for that person jumps from 2.00 all the way up to 7.77.
Wow. That's a massive jump just for changing the timing of that 1 year.
Exactly. It highlights a crucial point. The timing matters hugely for predictability. An unexpected interruption mid-career, something that disrupts that expected steady path, is quantifiably far more turbulent, more destabilizing than a planned transition at the end.
That really drives home that it's not just what happens, but when it happens. And I guess these disruptions can pile up.
Oh, absolutely. They compound. Let's build on it. Say someone works till 64. Retires at 65. Straightforward, turbulence of 2.0.
Right.
Now, what if that same person also changed jobs, say, from job 1 to job 2 back at age 57? Just one internal job change. Their turbulence goes up to 4.50.
Okay, another transition adds complexity.
And then what if they also had a year of unemployment between those two jobs? So job 1, then unemployment, then job 2, then retirement.
So multiple types of transitions.
Right. The turbulence increases further to 5.45. You can really see how each additional type of transition, job change, unemployment spell, and its timing adds layers to that complexity score. It's a powerful tool.
It really illustrates how dynamic it is. Not just employed, unemployed, but the whole journey. This data must be incredibly rich. But were there any limitations the study acknowledged in how the data was captured?
Yes, the author is quite upfront about a few things, mostly due to using annual register data.
Okay.
Because it only captures someone's main activity status at the end of each year, it might miss very short spells, like maybe 3 months of unemployment mid-year if you found a job by December 31st.
Ah, so it could slightly underestimate short-term turbulence.
Potentially, yes. And the data couldn't easily distinguish between full-time and part-time work, or different kinds of pensions, like ordinary disability versus partial disability.
Nuances get lost in the annual snapshot.
Right. But to help compensate, the study did try to look at job changes within employment, which adds back some of that detail about internal career shifts.
Okay, that's helpful. So thinking about policies aimed at extending working lives, raising retirement ages, cutting early exit routes, the ideal, from a policy view, is that these should reduce complexity, shouldn't they? Make the path to later retirement simpler.
That's absolutely the ideal theory, yes. Policymakers are generally aiming for de-differentiation, simplifying that transition from work to a later retirement age.
Makes sense logically.
The thinking is, Close off the alternative early exits. People work longer, then retire predictably. It eases pressure on pension systems.
But the real world?
The real world is often messier, right? Closing one popular early exit path doesn't always guarantee a smooth extension of work.
What might happen instead?
Well, another, perhaps less desirable pathway might just take its place. Maybe more people end up on long-term unemployment or relying on disability schemes if those are still accessible.
Or worse?
Or yeah, it could even push older workers into more insecure temporary jobs, increasing instability, not reducing it. This is what the study calls muddling through.
Muddling through. That's a powerful phrase. It sounds like just barely navigating the system until you can finally retire.
Exactly. It's a challenging, unpredictable journey, not that planned, smooth extension.
That really forces you to think about the human side of these policies. Which brings me to Finland. Why focus specifically on Finland? What makes it such a critical case study here?
Finland is an outstanding case because it actually pulled off something quite remarkable. It successfully increased older workers' labor market participation and significantly delayed the average retirement age.
They actually did it.
They did, especially after facing this incredibly severe economic crisis in the early 1990s. So it's almost like a natural experiment. You can see how comprehensive policy changes aimed at extending work interact with real careers and economic shifts.
Advice valuable lessons then. Both good and bad, maybe.
Exactly. Successes and cautionary tales for other countries facing similar demographic and money challenges.
So what was the backdrop? You mentioned a crisis. It sounds like these changes were forced, not gradual.
Largely, yes. It was a response to crisis. Back in the late 80s, paradoxically, even with a decent economy, Finland was actually promoting early exit.
Really? Why?
To help with structural changes, make room for younger workers in new industries. But then, boom, early 90s, a massive economic crisis hit.
How bad was it?
Really bad. Soaring unemployment and a huge surge in people taking early exit options, which put immense, immediate pressure on the pension system systems.
Sustainability, yeah, I can imagine. That must have forced their hand.
It really did. And critically, older workers' employment rates recovered much slower than the general economy. There was this huge pressure to do something drastic.
So a crisis forced them to rethink everything. What specific policy changes did they make between, say, 1997 and 2005 to get people working longer? They must have targeted those early exit pathways you mentioned.
Precisely. They went after those popular routes systematically, though often incrementally. One of the biggest was the unemployment tunnel.
The unemployment tunnel sounds intriguing.
It was a really common formal pathway out. If you became unemployed around age 53, you could get extended unemployment benefits starting around 55, bridging the gap until age 60 when you could switch to an unemployment pension.
And that pension lasted until?
Until the standard retirement age of 65, when it converted to an old age pension. It was a very clear and, for many, quite a desirable way out, even if it took a while.
So how did they reform that? Sounds like closing it would upset a lot of plans.
Oh, it absolutely did. The reforms were gradual but firm. First, in 97, they raised the age for the extended allowance from 55 to 57, but only if you lost your job after 55, made it a bit harder.
Okay, tightening the screws a bit.
Then the big one in 2005. The unemployment pension itself was abolished for new entrants. Gone.
Wow.
The extended allowance remained, but you couldn't get it until age 59. Much less attractive, much harder to reach. That really closed the tunnel.
What about disability pensions? Were those another major exit route, maybe for people with health issues?
Yes. Disability was another key pathway. They had two main types. Ordinary disability pension for permanent health issues available quite widely.
Okay.
And then a relaxed disability pension called Individual Early Retirement, or IER. This was easier to get from age 58 for people with long careers, but maybe less severe health problems, less strict medical checks.
A more flexible early exit then. Were those reformed too?
Absolutely. Targeted just like the tunnel. In 2000, the IER eligibility age went from 58 to 60. Then, in 2005, the IER was completely abolished for anyone born after 1943. Phased out.
So they were really closing off these options.
They were. Interestingly, they slightly loosened the medical criteria for the ordinary disability pension around the same time, maybe a small counterbalance. Yeah. But the overall direction was definitely towards tightening, reducing early exits.
Closing every alternative door, trying to funnel people towards working longer. What about the actual old age pension system itself? Did the retirement age change directly?
Yes. 2005 was huge for the whole system. Before that, you could retire early with reduced benefits from 58 in the public sector, 60 in private. Different rules. The 2005 reforms standardized that. raised the earliest age to 62 for everyone, and they replaced the fixed retirement age of 65 with a flexible range, 63 to 68.
Flexible. How did that work? Was there a penalty for retiring at 63?
No, that's the clever part. Retiring at 63 wasn't penalized, but if you worked longer, say towards 68, you were actively rewarded with a higher pension accrual rate.
Ah, a financial incentive to stay longer, not just a rule forcing you to.
Exactly. A strong nudge.
That's a massive overhaul. So what were the actual results? Did people really work longer?
The results were pretty impressive, actually. Employment rates for that key 55-64 age group went way up, from a low of about 33.5% in 1994 after the crisis to 61.4% in 2016, nearly doubled.
That's significant.
And interestingly, women's employment rates in that age group actually overtook men's by 2016. 63% for women, just under 60% for men.
Wow. Suggests real success in keeping older women working.
Seems so. And other research confirms closing those competing pathways directly raised the average retirement age by about 4 months. Fewer people retired before 62, and many more retired exactly at 63.
So people adapted, hit that new flexible retirement sweet spot.
Looks like it. The reforms definitely guided behavior.
And how does all this connect back to the specific people in this study? The cohorts born between 1937 and 1948.
Well, the study tracks these successive cohorts right through their late careers, ages 51 to 65. The core idea is that these reforms, tightening the tunnel, disability pensions, changing the retirement age, plus the economic recovery, would have a noticeable trend-like effect on career complexity across these different birth cohorts as they aged through this period of change.
So looking for how the changing landscape altered the late career experience for each group.
Exactly. How did policy and economy gradually reshape what it meant to have a late career?
Okay, so with all these massive changes in Finland, the reforms, the recovery, what did the study actually find? Did careers get more complex or less complex? Did they de-differentiate, or was there more muddling through?
Well, what's really fascinating is that the answer isn't a simple yes or no. It totally depends on how you measure and look at complexity, which shows the power of that Elzinga indicator.
Right.
To make it clearer, the study first grouped people into 5 common late career patterns based on what they did between 51 and 65. Gives you a big picture view first.
Okay, can you walk us through those 5 patterns? It sounds like a good way to understand the basics.
Sure. The biggest group, over half, 55.6%, was regular retirement. These folks worked pretty steadily until age 59 or later. Represents that more traditional path via the old age pension system.
So the majority had a relatively conventional planned exit. What were the other main groups?
Second largest was early retirement, about 24.5%. These people mostly retired before age 58, and it was likely, often through disability pensions, given the age, suggests a less voluntary, maybe health-related exit. Then the unemployment pension cluster, 15.6%. These clearly use that unemployment tunnel pathway we talked about. Retired via unemployment pension after being on benefits, shows how common that was.
Right, and the 2 smaller clusters, more challenging paths.
Yeah. Unemployment was 2.2%. These people had significant unemployment spells but didn't end up on an unemployment pension. And inactivity, 2.1%, were largely outside the labor market for the whole 15 years. Maybe long-term illness, caregiving, other reasons.
Did the size of these groups change over time, across the different birth cohorts? Did it reflect the reforms?
Absolutely. This is where you really see the policy impact. Huge shifts. Early retirement, often disability-linked, dropped significantly, from nearly 35% for the 1937 cohort down to just over 19% for the 1948 cohort.
Big decrease in that pathway.
Massive. Conversely, regular retirement grew substantially, from about 43% for the earliest cohort to almost 64% for the latest one.
So more people moving towards the intended later retirement path.
Exactly. And the unemployment pension group. It initially rose a bit, then fell steadily after the 1941 cohort, matching when that pathway was phased out. By the 1948 cohort, only about 12% used it.
Wow. It really paints a picture of policy directly changing how people exited work. Okay, so now the core question. Destabilization. What did Elzinga's turbulence indicator show? Let's start with the first view. Excluding job changes, just looking at moves between employment, and non-employment.
Right. When they looked only at those big transitions work, unemployment, different types of retirement, the overall finding for everyone studied was a clear, significant decrease in late career complexity.
A decrease, so de-differentiation.
Yes, exactly. On average, career paths became simpler over time in terms of moving between work and non-work states. The journey towards retirement got more streamlined, more predictable for the population as a whole.
That sounds like, like the policy goal was achieved then. Simpler paths like they intended.
From this specific angle, it certainly looks that way. This simplification, this de-differentiation, was strongest for those in the regular retirement group. Their paths became significantly smoother for the younger cohorts.
And the complexity seen in the unemployment pathways.
That high complexity, driven by frequent moves between work and non-work, became less common precisely because those pathways themselves were restricted or closed by the reforms.
So closing the side doors simplified the main highway to retirement.
That's a good way to put it. It suggests success in making the exit from the labor force more predictable.
Okay, so that's one side of the coin. Less complexity around leaving work. Seems positive from a policy view. But what about the other side? What happened when they included job changes moves between employers while still employed in the complexity measure? Did that change the story?
It absolutely tells a more nuanced and really crucial part of the story. As you'd expect, when you had job changes as transitions, the average complexity score goes up for everyone. More transitions equals more complexity.
Makes sense.
But for the population as a whole, even with job changes included, they still observed only a slight de-differentiation, a very small decrease in complexity overall.
Okay, so overall complexity didn't dramatically increase, even with job changes counted. But there's a key insight there, isn't there, about what was driving the complexity?
Exactly. This is probably the single most critical finding. The difference between the two turbulence scores the score with job changes minus the score without job changes that difference increase over time for both men and women.
Increased. What does that signify?
It's huge. It means that as people worked longer and as those early exit routes vanished, changes between jobs started contributing more to late career complexity than the old transitions between work and non-work did.
So less complexity from exiting, but potentially more from moving around within work.
Precisely. You might not be bouncing between unemployment and work as much, but you are perhaps more likely to be changing employers. It suggests late careers became increasingly defined by internal job mobility rather than external exits, a fundamental shift.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really implies we need to look beyond averages. How did this play out differently for men and women? Or by education? It sounds like the policy effects weren't hitting everyone the same way.
Absolutely. There's significant stratification here, and that's where the policy implications get really interesting. Conventional wisdom often suggests women's careers are more complex breaks, part-time work, etc.
Right.
And this study did initially find that, yes, Finnish women had higher complexity than men, just looking at main activity status changes. Work on.
Okay, as expected, maybe.
But here's the surprise. Women's late careers then de-differentiated got simpler faster than men's across the cohorts. Their complexity levels actually converged with men's over time.
Wow, so women's careers were simplifying more quickly in terms of just being in or out of the workforce. That kind of goes against the usual narrative. What about when job changes were included? Did that pattern hold?
This is where it gets really interesting, and the paths diverge a bit. When including job changes, men's late careers actually showed a slight destabilization, a small upward trend in complexity.
Meaning men were changing jobs more.
It suggests that, yeah, on average, men experienced more job mobility, more internal career shifts as those early exits closed. But women, their late career complexity, including job changes, actually decreased.
Decreased.
Yeah.
Even with job changes. That's really counterintuitive. Why would women experience less increase in job mobility, maybe even a decrease, as they worked longer?
The study points to the specific Finnish context. Finland has what's called an inclusive welfare state. Universal services, strong safety nets, high female labor participation supported by policy.
Right.
And a lot of Finnish women work in the public sector, social work, health, education. These jobs are often very stable, maybe have good retirement options built in.
So less incentive to change jobs late in their careers compared to men, perhaps in more dynamic private sectors.
That seems to be the interpretation. The stability of those public sector roles might have dampened job mobility for women, even as they worked longer. It means Finland's situation, with its welfare state and job segregation, might produce different gender outcomes than, say, more liberal market economies.
Fascinating. Context really matters for gender differences. Okay, what about education? Did that create big divides in how stable or complex late careers were? This feels like where we might see major inequalities.
You're right. This raises crucial questions about social inequality. And the study found really substantial, persistent differences based on education. The reforms definitely did not affect everyone equally.
Let's start with lower educated workers. How did they fare? Were they hit hard by the closure of early exit routes?
Unfortunately, yes. Lower educated workers consistently faced a much higher risk of early exit, often involuntary, through those disability or unemployment pathway.
The very pathways being closed.
Exactly. And when looking at complexity excluding job changes, just the big work-on-work shifts, their complexity remained relatively stable across cohorts.
Stable, not simpler.
Right. Which is significant because it suggests closing those exit routes had the least effect on reducing their reliance on them. They were still finding ways out or being pushed out even as it got harder. Persistent vulnerability.
So, while policy aimed to simplify paths, theirs didn't get simpler. This sounds exactly like that muddling through scenario.
It really does. This group fits that description best. Higher chance of unemployment, high complexity in those unemployment-related pathways they often used. They were at growing risk of having to just scrape by, moving in and out of maybe insecure jobs, collecting benefits, just trying to make it to retirement age.
Not a stable extended career at all.
Far from it. And critically, when job changes were included, this group experienced a higher rate of late career destabilization, more frequent, often involuntary job shifts. The study specifically notes lower educated women were particularly vulnerable here.
That's a really stark contrast to the overall trend. What about the other end? Higher educated workers. A totally different story. Did they maybe even benefit?
A profoundly different story, much more positive. They started with much lower complexity, especially just looking at main activity status. They weren't really using those early exit paths much anyway.
Stronger position to begin with.
Definitely. And more importantly, they experienced a faster rate of de-differentiation. Their careers became even more simple and predictable across the cohorts. A further reduction in using benefits or pensions before the standard age.
So their already stable careers got even more stable. What about when job changes were included for them? Did that add complexity, like for the lower educated?
Even when including job changes, their careers still tended to de-differentiate overall, become simpler. And here's another key nuance. The difference between the two turbulence scores, versus without job changes, was highest for the higher educated groups, and it was increasing.
What does that mean?
It strongly implies that for them, job changes were more likely to be voluntary. Positive moves. Driven by incentives like better pay, better work, better conditions. It wasn't instability, it was increased, often beneficial, job mobility. Agency.
So it sounds like the higher educated were clearly the main beneficiaries, able to adapt, navigate the changes, maybe even improve their situation.
That's exactly what the study suggests. Higher educated workers, especially men in that group, seemed to benefit most from the economic recovery and adapted successfully to the reforms. They had the skills, the opportunities, the agency to make it work for them.
And the middle group, the middle educated, where did they fall?
For that large group in the middle, the study found their career complexity remained largely stable across the cohorts. Didn't matter much if you included job changes or not.
So not the strong simplification of the higher educated, but not the destabilization of the lower educated either.
Pretty much. They seemed to be in a middle ground. Their patterns were relatively consistent over time. An important group, often overlooked, whose experience was different again.
So it really seems destabilization isn't a simple yes-no. It's incredibly nuanced, depends who you are, how you measure it.
Exactly. If you connect it to the bigger picture, you have to look way beyond just raw numbers or simple labels like working longer. And it's hard to say complexity is inherently good or bad. It really depends on the context, the individual's situation, their agency.
Right. Was the complexity chosen or forced? That's the core question.
Precisely.
So how do we reconcile these mixed results? What does low complexity mean versus high complexity in real terms?
Well, low complexity can mean great job security, a predictable path to retirement. That's the ideal for many. But it could also mean low job mobility, maybe feeling stuck, even if a better job exists, lack of opportunity.
And high complexity.
It can definitely be linked to insecurity, unpredictable retirement, that muddling through, stress, financial worries.
But not always.
Not always. As we saw with the higher educated, high complexity can also mean high mobility, new opportunities, voluntary changes for better pay or conditions, actively shaping your career. So it's not binary. It's about the drivers and the agency.
That's a really powerful distinction. What would you say is this study's main contribution overall, beyond just describing Finland?
I think a key strength, its main contribution, was combining those findings, excluding and including job transitions. That comparison was crucial
Why was that so important?
because it let them estimate why complexity was changing. Was it mainly about exiting the labor market, work-on-work transitions, or was it about mobility within work, job-to-job transitions? That distinction is vital for understanding what extended working lives actually look like.
Shift the focus from just, are people working longer, to what's the quality and predictability of that longer work life.
Exactly. What kind of mobility defines it?
That's a powerful lens. So
Yeah.
what are the big policy takeaways from Finland's experience? Lessons for other countries?
So several key things. First, it shows reforms can work to extend working lives, especially if jobs are available and older workers have the skills. Finland's recovery and activating policies helped. But, and this is critical even in a place like Finland with a generous activating system, during good economic times, the benefits are not evenly spread.
The inequality persists.
Absolutely. Lower educated workers and sometimes women, especially lower educated women, remained more vulnerable. Less simplification, more muddling through.
So what's the lesson for policymakers everywhere?
It highlights the absolute need for targeted support. Lifelong learning, reskilling, adaptable social security, things to prevent that muddling through and make sure extended working lives are genuinely beneficial for everyone, not just the most advantaged. Equity is key.
And like any good study, this one acknowledged limitations, right? What did the author point out?
Yeah, the author was clear. First, Finland is context-specific. Its welfare state, its history, high female participation. You can't just copy-paste findings elsewhere without comparative research.
Need to understand different national contexts.
Right. Second, it's hard to pin down the exact causal effect of one specific reform. They were incremental, overlapping, mixed with economic shifts. It's more about the cumulative effect of the changing environment.
The whole shifting landscape, not just one lever pulled. Anything else?
The author suggests future research could look at things beyond just education, like occupation or industry sector, get more granular, and crucially, more research on the voluntariness and the costs versus benefits of job changes late in careers. Do they actually improve things for people, or are they just forced adaptation? That would give a much fuller picture.
It really feels like our individual experiences of later life at work are becoming so incredibly diverse. It's not just about hitting a fixed retirement age anymore. It's navigating this complex, often unpredictable landscape, shaped by policy, the economy, our own situations.
That's a really profound point. That traditional linear path, it's increasingly a thing of the past. And as Finland shows, even well-meant reforms can have vastly different outcomes depending on your starting point, your gender, your education.
Understanding these nuances, the complexities behind the averages, seems crucial.
It really is, both for individuals planning their own futures and for policymakers trying to create genuinely equitable and beneficial, longer working lives for everyone.
Absolutely. So the question for you listening is, as societies keep encouraging longer working lives, what new kinds of career paths and challenges might emerge for you or people around you in your own late careers?
Yeah, what does true stability even look like in this complex world of work now? And how do we ensure these extended working lives are good for everyone, not just a lucky few?
Lots to reflect on there. How might these big trends impact your life or the lives of people you know? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.